In today's video, I show you how to paint up the rest of the terrain from Company of Heroes 2. But before we get into today's video, just want to share with you what the GGGGs are for this month. Each month, Bob the Beholder picks some of my Patreon supporters to receive gratitude gifts. And for this month of May of 2025, we have a pledge for the Talisman Saber terrain. It is 3D printable open lock hex terrain system. And I've done a number of videos in the past covering their previous Kickstarters, which I've used for Gloomhaven, and their current Kickstarter covers some of the themes found in Frosthaven. By the time I post this video, there will only be one day left of the campaign, so go ahead and use the link below to go to the campaign if you want to pledge that. And finally, we have $100 going towards a crowdfunding campaign, which my Patreon supporters are currently voting upon. Go ahead and use the link below to go to my Patreon page, where you can find out more information on how you can get in on the chance of winning one of these gratitude gifts. So my previous week's video, if you haven't seen that, go ahead and check it out here. I did show you a painting tutorial for all of box 1 and half of terrain box 2. And this video is the rest of the terrain, which is the second half of terrain box 2 and then all of terrain box 3. To be perfectly honest, what took the most amount of time were these resource flagpoles, just because there was so many little tidbits and items that required different colors to be on them. And I did buy the flag pack so that I could have double the number of flags in case we're playing a 6-player game on a huge board with multiple resource spots. You don't really need the flag pack, additional flag pack that takes you from 12 to 24 unless you are playing the larger games. But I did go ahead and get extra flag packs. And to be perfectly honest, you don't even need the extra flag pack if you are willing to use some of this terrain from terrain box 3, some of these corners, in order to actually have these flags on them, because they provide some flagpoles that you can insert in there and then stick flags on them as well. I'm not entirely sure, because I haven't played the game enough, why you would be able to capture some of this terrain other than using the resource packs here. Maybe it provides some cover for you as you capture that resource point. I'm not 100% sure, so if you know the answer to that, go ahead and make a comment below in the comment sections explaining that for me. Also, I didn't opt to really paint up these little hole covers for these corner packs, as well as the forest here where you can capture them, because I think they're supposed to default there, because if you leave them in, basically you can't fit it back in the box. So I think for the most part, I'm just going to keep them off. I won't really bother sticking them in, because it's just a lot of work to be able to do that. But everything else I did go ahead and paint up. So from terrain pack 2, I did finish painting up these concrete bunkers, and I apologize, one of my viewers and Patreon supporters basically said that I had not flipped this over, and that's why this top wasn't fitting. So I feel like a total idiot for not realizing that. So there aren't two different types of concrete bunkers. They're exactly the same. So that fixes that. And then I did go ahead and paint up the cathedral, which I think turned out pretty well. And it does have the optional ruined building top. So that ended up looking pretty cool. And then I really like these factory buildings from Terrain Pack 3. I think they look super cool. It does have this smokestack that does attach to the side. Now there is an option of, instead of this, having some barrels that goes on the side of there. But I didn't bother painting those up because I definitely like this stack better. And I think it's super cool that you just remove the top of these when these buildings are destroyed, and it automatically has a ruin section that you can use. So really like these buildings a lot. But let's get to some of the terrain pieces from Terrain Pack 3. It adds a lot of the foliage, trees, more of these hard cover, as well as these stone ones here. So really like this pack a lot. I think it will add a ton to the board. I will say though that it's a little bit confusing to me, because some of the spots on the board actually have an odd number of angles to them. So because each one of these covers two sides on the hexagon, you can't ever get an odd number of them, because when you combine them, you can only get an even number. So that's sort of a design flaw that prevents you from completely following what's on the board, because a number of spaces on the board does have an odd number of sides on the hexagons that are in cover. But other than that, I think it does add to the board and gives more of a 3D feel. One of the things I did ask on Board Game Geek is whether or not a unit does benefit from cover if they're not in the hex that they're shooting through. And the answer that I received from the game designer is basically no. The only way that you gain cover from any of these pieces is if you're in the hex that contains that cover. So even if there's a bunch of trees in the way when you're firing here to here, the target doesn't gain any of the cover bonuses unless the cover is actually in the hex that they're in. So that was a little bit confusing for me, but I'm glad that that got clarified. But that was pretty much it for this video, sort of quick and dirty. I am going to be starting up painting all of the factions. So that's going to be hopefully another video coming out in another week or two. But I just wanted to get the terrain done as quickly as possible because I think it's more fun to paint up the tanks. So I was delaying gratification, getting this all done before I went ahead and painted up all of the factions. Oh, one quick thing that I forgot to mention is I did go ahead and paint the insides of all of the ruined buildings. I didn't do that previously because I had to get that video out as quickly as possible, but I did have time to do that. Stick around if you want for the painting tutorial. And remember, use the link below to go to my Patreon page where you can get a chance of receiving one of this month's gratitude gifts. And then finally, happy painting, happy gaming. We'll see you next time. One of the decisions I made was to go ahead and paint the inside of the ruins, and I'm just going to use neutral gray for all of them. The reason why I didn't do this originally is just because I needed to get the video out as soon as possible and I was running behind, so that's the primary reason why. I don't think it looks bad with just the dark brown on the inside, but I agree that it doesn't take that much time just to color the inside a little bit like this, and see how I'm being splotchy and not bothering with the corners or down here at the bottom where it's going to be darker anyway. I'm using the same gray, neutral gray, for the bunker, and just want to show you how having sort of the brown is actually better than having a dark gray undercoating, because again, it just creates a little bit more variety in terms of color, and you want it to be splotchy like this where the crevices maintain sort of the dark color, and you want to sort of streak it downwards. And I like to have the bottom portion of buildings again be dark towards the bottom parts, just because that's sort of how dust and dirt accumulate towards the bottom. Sometimes it works better if you just flip it upside down like this and you just drag the paint accordingly, and then every once in a while I'll streak at the bottom. But this is sort of the kind of effect that's really easy to get with these hog's hair brushes. And I'm using a larger brush right now just because I want to cover more area. So this is establishing a nice sort of base color of gray, and also providing some streaks. Because sort of on concrete you're going to get rain streaks and dirt streaks, but maintaining some of the brown, the dark brown, is just going to give it a little bit of variety of color, and then enable you to make it look more weathered rather than just spray painting the whole thing gray. And then just across the top like this. See how I sort of smash the brush in here. And again, that's why I like these hog's hair brushes, is that you can be pretty abusive and just smash, you know, the brush into places, and you're not gonna ruin a brush, because if you try to do this with a regular sable brush, you would absolutely wreck your brush. And then you can also sort of stipple it too if you want. See, just to make it a little bit uneven, you just sort of stipple like so. You can put that effect all around like this. And again, heavier towards the top, less so towards the bottom. People make the mistake of just doing one solid color of gray, or even spray painting. And again, you can spray prime this a darker gray, or even black would work, although I find that the contrast with black is a little bit too much. I'm gonna go ahead and grab some slate gray. Grabbing this again, and now I'm just stippling. Again, heavy on the top, lighter on the bottom. There you go. All right, I'm going back to milk chocolate for the Cathedral. And this time I'm using another brush. You know, the reason why I switch out brushes isn't so much because it makes a huge difference, but it's because I have to wash the brushes in between colors, major colors, and it takes a while for it to dry. So that's why I just switch to a different brush when I go to another color. And this in particular, this brush, because it's rounded like this, it's easier to get inside into these bricks, and that's sort of why I grabbed this one. But you can use any of the other brushes too, it doesn't really matter that much. And you'll get a feel after a while for how to work these hog's hair brushes. And because this color is so, doesn't have great coverage, once it's dry, I will do a second coat like over here, just to lighten it up a little bit more. So just keep that in mind that you'll do 2 coats, most likely. All right, now I'm grabbing some honey brown, and this is going to just provide a highlight, a lighter highlight. So I'm not gonna put as much on, but as you can notice here, I'm sort of dragging it down one direction, and it just provides some nice highlights to add to the building. See the difference? All right, so here I have antique maroon, but it's so close to rookwood red that you can just use rookwood red instead if you want. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and grab some burlap or any beige color. You can use white if you want, but straight white tends to make the color look a little weird. So just mix a little bit of it together like this to lighten it up. And then get some of it off because you're wanting to dry brush. And the effect is subtle, but you're catching the front edge of the tiles and just giving it a little bit of highlight by doing that. See? Very subtle, as I mentioned. But it gives a little bit more dimension to these tiles, roof tiles. Oops, a little bit too much there. So it looks like that. So I'm going to take burnt sienna, just a different sort of reddish brown color, because I just want a different brown for the doors. So just really quickly just paint these up so that it's just a different brown than the rest of the building. Like that. I already colored, put on one coat on these, and this is my second coat, just because I want to make it a little bit brighter.
$200 extra per month, but they in-laws try to claim they charge us extra for their role as property managers of the apartment. Cheeky bastards. Social media about it, and I wasn't happy that he kept it a secret with them from now on. That was that. At least, I thought so. A week ago, on CCTV camera footage of that night, but it was blurry and didn't catch much. It did manage to catch half a license plate though, and the color and make of a car.
So I'm alternating some of the colors, and a lot of these I have to do two coats just because the undercoat is so dark. But this case, some of them just, and you notice I painted the barrels green for some of them. And then in others I painted the barrel blue, and we'll paint this something else. So just making it a little bit more random rather than everything being uniform in color. I'm grabbing some marigold because I'm looking at these and it's quite not bright enough. It's not different enough from all the other browns. So I went over it. In case this is supposed to be gold, again, not 100% sure what these things are, but as resources, you know, I naturally think that it's money. And then in some of these other ones, I made it gray, which could be silver, I guess. But again, just more options, and it makes it a little bit more colorful. Grabbing some orange. I'm doing the crate here, and the reason why I put the gray is because orange and even the reds are notoriously bad at being able to cover over dark undercoats. So that's why I put the gray as a base coat before putting on the orange. Alright, so here are my finished flags. Honestly, these took longer than any of the buildings did, but I mixed it up a little bit, and really, honestly, you can't tell the color difference that much between these two. I mean, if you hold it up close and under light, you can. So just pick one of the two. I don't think you have to do both. And then I just mixed up some of the colors here. Just to give a little bit more variety. Obviously these aren't all going to be right next to each other, so it's not going to look this uniform. You know, some of these will be like this, so it'll look a little bit different, but that's it. Alright, I'm grabbing my antique maroon again, although I wish I had more rookwood red, because I would use this instead because it is slightly lighter than this real super dark one, but I'm running out. So that's why I'm using this instead. These are the factory buildings from the third terrain box. that comes with all of the ground cover terrain. Because this color is so dark, again, I'll probably have to do 2 coats of this just to get it to stand out more, because it's pretty dark. And don't forget, you gotta do the ruins too, so pull that off and do these tops as well. Don't forget this section. And then I'm also doing this the same color. You can do it a different color if you want, but I gotta get these things done. Forgot to show you these pipes. Not pipes, smokestacks, I guess. That's what you call them for these factories. Grabbing some burlap again and then mixing it to get a lighter shade. And this is similar to what I did with the roof of the cathedral. Some quick dry brushing just to pick up some of the highlights here. I mostly want to keep it this brick color. Alright, I am grabbing some fawn. I know I keep going back and forth between the fawn and the burlap. Really doesn't matter. I just grab whatever is closest to me. I still have this hog's hair brush, my smallest one, just because, again, I want to leave the crevices dark brown so that I'm only picking out the bricks. And as always, towards the end, I just fade it out to keep the end down here darker. So just fade it. Grabbing some apple barrel burnt umber, going over the doors. Don't forget the doors on the chimney stack. Grabbing some black. Alright, I'm gonna go ahead and put some black around the ruins, assuming like it was made from a blast or a fire. And I just stab it like this. Stab, stab, stab. Like that. Doing the same stabby stabby over here. See, like that. I did the same thing here on the tips of the towers, and I think it ended up looking pretty good. Looks pretty industrial and is distinct enough from the other buildings that It just creates more variety on the board. So super happy with it. Alright, so I don't know if they still make this color because obviously it's pretty old. The sticker's all cracking. This is Hauser Dark Green. It's a pretty dark green. I'm going to use this color for all of my pine trees because I feel like pine trees are darker than your deciduous trees. Now I spray painted this with what colors? I'm going to put on the screen here. I'm going to flash it really quickly here. What I primed all of my plants terrain with this color. And as you can see here, the primer is pretty dark, so I don't bother like going into all the cracks and crevices, but gonna do this first and then layer lighter and lighter. I'll also do all the bushes with the base color of this green, even though it's going to be a different color later on. I also colored all the bushes here on these and then picked one of the trees out of the pairing to base it that way. Not sure how that's going to look later, but went ahead and did that. Okay, now I'm grabbing some white, and the reason why I'm not grabbing what I normally get, which is the beige, is because with pine trees, you know, they're called, they have sort of a, they call it silver, but it's not really silver. They have sort of this kind of color to it. That's different from more of the greens of the deciduous trees. And here I'm just going to like touch the edges. So I'm going the opposite direction like this so that I'm hitting just the edges. Maybe that isn't as good, so let me try dragging down, see what that looks like. That looks a little bit better, sort of like that. That looks too much like a Christmas tree. Maybe I'll tone it down and have a mid shade first. Maybe a little bit, yeah, like that. Alright, now I'm going back to the lighter white mix just to hit the highlights, since I do think it looks better with that mid-tone in there first. There. Alright, now I have some festive green. It's a lot more lighter and very green. And I'm using it to paint up some of the tree leaves for the deciduous trees, and I'm also highlighting the bushes with it, like so. And then also on these conifers, don't forget the bushes here. Like that. All right, now I'm grabbing some avocado, which is more of an olive green, and I'm gonna put this on some of the trees that don't have anything on it yet. More variety. Now I'm grabbing some celery green. If you don't have celery or don't want to buy it, just add some beige or white to the avocado. You'll get the same effect pretty much. You'll notice here I don't really wash my brush in between unless I am changing to a pretty different color, but since the green is all similar, it's just different shades of it, I don't bother washing my brush. Alright, so here I'm going to go back to what I painted with avocado and provide some highlights for it. Like so. Look at that, that looks nice. Alright, so now I have some white left over here. I'm going to try mixing it with this color to get a highlight for this green. Yeah, the festive green. that's pretty light, but I think it passes. No, I think that's different enough. Okay, I'll go with that. Okay, now I'm gonna basically do something very similar with this green, which is the Hauser dark green. So let's see how this turns out. Okay, I think that looks pretty good.
Event last week, but it was mostly because the board was the like people were just kind of freaking out about the board. They were like, "That's super cool," and one of my buddies,
he's got some sort of weird scheduling conflict. Whereas if we're just playing on Monday night like we were,
or the like we had one round where a lot of players got magnifiers that I'd never played with before, and I hadn't even read the rules properly before.
All right, I'm grabbing some honey brown. And then on these, I'm not 100% sure whether this is stone or dirt, but I didn't want to make it all gray because trees don't grow on stone like that. But I'm just gonna highlight this real quick just to make it not be just a solid block of brown. I don't know what this is, whether that is a tree stump. I wanted to say that because there's a base to it, I want to say that it's more like a broken pillar. But again, not 100% sure. Make a comment below if you know what this feature is. I know you're supposed to put a flag in there, but whether it's a tree stump or something else, not 100% sure. But there you go.
When there's like a kid, when one of the siblings has like more needs than the parent.
I'm going to use the same method that I used for the tank traps and the barbed wire and make the fence rusty. So I'm going to use Rookwood Red and the Spiced Pumpkin Orange. So just randomly hitting spots with these two colors. And obviously you can choose to paint these a non-rusted color, either painted black or silver or gold even. But again, because we're in a war zone, I want it to look rusted out and all messed up. forest green. I have a lot smaller brush now. I'm picking out all of the vegetation that's on these rocks. Well, not all of them. I'm not doing the vine with this color. There's a couple of plants on here, like this. Then on the back, we have this one here. This one here, and then we have this one right here in the corner. Like so.